Today, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Kazushi Hashimoto-san. He is actually a consultant and an advisor to Yashio Engineering Company Limited, as well as Japan Sanitation Consortium, specializing in environmental engineering and wastewater treatment. Today, he will speak to you on institutional mechanisms and frameworks for on-site sanitation systems, learnings from the successful case studies, and especially lessons from Japan and other Asian countries. Over to you, Hashimoto-san.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, so I'll start. I am Kazushi Hashimoto, advisor to Japan Sanitation Consortium. I will explain about the institutional framework for on-site wastewater management in Japan. Next, please. Okay. Today, my presentation is divided into 4 chapters. In chapter 1, I will present you key issues and challenges of on-site sanitation management system. In chapter 2, I will explain regulatory framework for on-site wastewater and septage management in Japan and its achievement. In chapter 3, I will discuss on the issue of the organizational framework for citywide inclusive sanitation, CWISE. There are 2 different models, the municipality model as such in Japan and the utility model as such in Lusaka, Zambia. In chapter 4, I will discuss on the financial framework for CWISE. This issue is closely related to the issue of the organizational framework. Next, please. Chapter 1, key issue and challenges. I will present you key issues and challenges of on-site sanitation management system often observed in developing countries, but some of them are not limited to developing countries. Next, please. When I visited ASCII 3 years ago, Professor Charlie gave me a book titled Policy on Fecal Sludge and Septage Management, published by the Telangana state government, which describes the issues and challenges on on-site sanitation management system in India, as shown in this slide. I believe the situation in other developing countries are more or less similar to those in India. Next, please. When we can categorize these challenges of on-site sanitation management system, which are commonly observed not only in developing countries, but also in developed countries, including Japan, as shown in this table. Whatever regulatory, organizational, and financial framework are to be chosen, all these challenges must be dealt with properly. Key word would be to make on-site sanitation not a private matter, but a public matter. In Japan, on-site sanitation is very much a public matter. Next, please. I consider that institutional framework consists of regulatory framework, organizational framework, and the financial framework, which are closely interrelated. In this chapter, I will explain the regulatory framework in Japan, how it works, and its achievements. Next, please. The issue of improper design of on-site facility and the lack of monitoring of compliance with the building standards. For example, the problem of too small septic tank compared to the number of users, which is often observed in developing countries, is in Japan dealt with by establishing such system as only the product which meet structural standard established by the central government can be sold in the market. By creating performance testing system in which the new design of the on-site facility needs to pass the performance test conducted by the testing agency, designated by the central government, and by the building confirmation system, in which the design of the on-site facility is checked by the building officials deployed by the municipal government before the commencement of construction work of all the new houses and buildings. The problem of poor installation, such as septic tank underneath homes, making access for inspecting or designing difficult, which is often observed in developing countries, is in Japan dealt with by creating such system in which only the installation business, which employ the certified installation workers who have passed national examination and is registered to the prefectural government, can do the installation work. Next, please. Next, please. Yes. The problem of improper management of the sludge, such as dumping of fecal sludge on drains and open areas, and the problem of unregulated desalting operators working in the difficult conditions, which is often observed in developing countries, is in Japan dealt with both by making desalting a legal obligation of the owner of the on-site facility and by the approval system of desalting vendors, in which only the desalting vendors which are approved by the municipal government can do the business. It is legal obligation of all the municipalities in Japan to dispose the on-site sludge safely in accordance with waste disposal and the public cleansing law promulgated in 1954 and revised in 1970. Nationwide development of the sludge treatment capacity, under which more than 1,000 sludge treatment plants were built by the municipal government nationwide in 1960s and 70s, had contributed to solve these problems. Next, please. In Japan, we use JOCASO, high-performance decentralized wastewater treatment system for both residential users and non-residential, commercial and institutional users. In developing countries, while most of the residential users continue to use septic tank, commercial users are required to use high-performance treatment system similar to JOCASO. Such high-performance treatment system requires operation maintenance services in addition to the desalting services in order to operate properly. In order to make sure that such high-performance treatment system operates properly, a lot of measures are taken in Japan. It is made a legal obligation of the owners of the treatment systems to maintain them according to the frequencies established by the ordinance of the central government. Only the operation and maintenance vendor, which employs the certified operators and is registered to the prefectural government, can do the maintenance work. It is made a legal obligation of the owner to deploy a technical supervisor to manage large treatment system for a high 501 population equivalent or more. On-site sanitation facility, regardless whether it uses conventional technologies such as septic tank or use high-performance treatment systems such as JOCASO, a lot of human resources are required to build and maintain these on-site facilities properly. In Japan, the training and national examination system for the installation workers, desalting workers, and the operators of such on-site facility was established. A training institution was founded and is designated as the agency which administers the national examination by the central government. Next, please. Next, please. In many countries, not limited to the developing countries, the performance of the on-site treatment system is not monitored. And the people are dubious about the on-site treatment system, resulting in the lack of accountability. In Japan, all the jokaso, the standard on-site treatment system in Japan, are subject to annual inspection by the third-party inspection agency designated by the prefectural government. Furthermore, the compliance to the effluent standards of the large-size on-site treatment system is strictly monitored by the prefectural government in accordance with the provisions of water pollution control law. Next, please. For more details, this is my paper on the institutional framework on on-site sanitation management system in Japan, which is published by ADBI. Please refer to this document. Next, please. I consider achievement number one of Japan's on-site wastewater and septage management system may be that Japan has succeeded to establish complete fecal sludge management system 50 years ago. Next, please. Achievement number two is related to achievement number one. As a result of the establishment of complete fecal sludge management system, together with the piped water supply system, both of which were completed around the year 1970, 50 years ago, Japan succeeded to eliminate waterborne disease by year 1970. Based on this experience, I fully endorse Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's effort to improve fecal sludge management in developing countries. Next, please. Achievement number three may be Japan succeeded to develop human resources, which is vital for the on-site sanitation management. More than 200,000 technicians have been trained and have passed national examinations and joined the business related to the on-site sanitation and are making money. Next, please. Achievement number four may be the environmental effects. 85% of all the decentralized wastewater treatment systems, jokaso in Japan, produce the effluent of good water quality, BOD less than 20 milligram per liter, which is equal to that of the modern wastewater treatment plants. Certainly, Japan's on-site sanitation management system is contributing to the improvement of aquatic environment in Japan. Next, please. In the previous chapter, chapter 2, I explained how Japan's on-site and septage management system is working. You may understand that in Japan, while the central government establishes regulations and standards, local governments, the municipal governments, and the prefectural government, which is an administrative jurisdiction in between the central government and the municipal government, play important role in ensuring these regulations and standards are actually implemented and enforced so that the on-site sanitation services are provided to all the customers properly. We can call it as the municipality model. You may imagine that in order to make such a system workable, a lot of human resources are needed in both private sector and the public sector. In this regard, you may find that in Japan, the training and the national examination system administered by a training institution designated by the central government play important role. Without such a system and training institution, the municipality model would not work. But there are another option, which is the utility model. I visited a few African countries and found out that some African countries adopt the utility model for on-site sanitation management. Next, please. This table shows what are differences between the municipality model and the utility model. The difference is who are on the driver's seat. In many African countries, the same public utility, such as water and sewage sanitation corporation or sanitation corporation, which provide the sewage service, is also implementing the jobs related to on-site sanitation. The degree of their involvement in on-site sanitation differs country by country. But in most of all the African countries, at least treatment of the sludge collected and transported by the discharging operators are conducted by such utilities. Under the utility model, some of these challenges which are described in chapter 1 would be dealt with by the utilities. The regulations and standards would be established by the central government, but in many African countries, it is a common practice that an independent regulatory agency is created. And this regulatory agency establishes the regulation and the standards and monitors the performance of the utilities, including their compliance with the regulation and the standards. The regulatory agency also has the authority to approve the tariff plan proposed by the utility from the viewpoint of balancing the interest of the customers and of the utility. Next, please. This is very good example of utility model. In Lusaka City, Zambia, 70% of the population live in slum areas, and most of them are using pit latrine. The sludge of these pit latrines, particularly those in the slum areas, had not been managed properly, resulting in the groundwater pollution and the recent spread of cholera disease in the cities. In order to deal with these challenges, LWSC, the previous Lusaka Water and Sewerage Corporation, renamed itself as Lusaka Water and Sanitation Corporation and started to take a leading role for the improvement of on-site sanitation management, particularly in slum areas. As for the challenge of improper design of the on-site facility, in this case, the pit latrine, LWSC has developed the design of the improved pit latrine, which does not contaminate the groundwater and is easy to dislodge. The Lusaka City Council officially included in the building guidelines. It will be included in the code of practice of on-site sanitation, which National Water Supply and the Sanitation Council, NOASCO, the regulator, is formulating as a national standard. As for the challenge of the lack of compliance with the building standard, LWSC is promoting the use of the improved pit latrine by providing subsidies to the residents. Next, please. In order to deal with the challenge of improper sludge management, particularly in the slum areas, on-site sanitation and fecal sludge management, FSM services, were added at the scope of LWSC's operation, and FSM unit was established in LWSC. LWSC has developed a FSM business model for provision of FSM services in slum areas, under which LWSC has signed a performance-based contract with 6 private companies. LWSC subsidizes part of the emptying cost of private discharging vendors. LWSC is operating the sewage system in the city, and one of their wastewater treatment plants receives the on-site sludge. LWSC is building 2 new fecal sludge treatment plants currently. Next, please. In order to improve the accountability of services of water utilities in Zambia, National Water Supply and Sanitation Council, NOWASCO, was established in 1997. NOWASCO provides license to the utilities which provide the water and sanitation services in the municipalities in Zambia and approves the tariff plan proposed by the utilities. NOWASCO reviewed its licensing condition for the utilities in December 2018 and added the services related to the on-site sanitation and FSM to the utilities' responsibilities. You may find that under the utility model, the existing utilities, such as the Water and Sewerage Corporation, expand their role to the area of on-site sanitation and fecal sludge management, FSM, and are taking lead for the improvement of on-site sanitation management system together with the regulatory agencies such as NOWASCO in case of Zambia. Which model is better to follow, municipality model and utility model? This may be an open question. There may be pros and cons of each model. Japan's organizational framework for on-site sanitation is a municipality model, and I believe this model is working well in Japan. But in developing countries, the utility model seems a better fit to the realities in developing countries, particularly from the financial viewpoint, which I will explain in the next chapter. Next, please. Chapter 4, Financial Framework for CWISE. Next, please. Yes. When considering the financial option for CWISE, particularly for FSM, the following 3 challenges, among others, must be taken into account. Number 1, high cost for the discharging services. It costs $50 per household in Asia. It is more expensive in Africa. It is a substantial financial burden for average household, particularly if he or she needs to pay it at once. Challenge number 2, willingness to pay for the sanitation tends to be much lower compared to that for the water supply services in developing countries. In Southeast Asian countries, average household is paying $2 per month for urban sewage services. On the other hand, in both Jakarta and Manila, the unit sewage service charge for the non-residential users, such as hotels and commercial buildings, is set at a level about 5 times higher than that for the residential users. As far as the sanitation services based on the sewerage system is concerned, the cross-subsidization is working to fill the gap between the high service cost and the low willingness to pay of the average household. But is such cross-subsidization workable for the FSM services? Challenge number 3. In some Asian countries, the utility operating the fecal sludge treatment plants charges the sludge treatment fee to the private discharging vendors. Such practice may induce the illegal disposal of the sludge to the rivers and the canals by private discharging vendors. The financial framework for CWISE FSM needs to be the one which deals with above 3 challenges effectively. There are 3 models, 3 different financial options. Next, please. This table shows the financial framework for sanitation in Japan. The user of the sewage system pays the sewage charge to the utility together with the water bill. Each user of the on-site facility, Jokaso in Japan, pays the discharging fee to the private discharging vendors. The discharging fee is to be paid at once, which costs $200 in Japan. Sludge treatment cost is covered by the municipal general account. In other words, in Japan, the user of the on-site facility needs to pay the cost for removal and transport of the sludge, but does not need to pay the sludge treatment cost. This is very important. In many Asian developing countries, sometimes the discharging vendors are charged the sludge treatment fee by the utility, which is passed on to the users. Such practice may induce the illegal disposal of the sludge to public water bodies, such as rivers and canals. Next, please. In some African countries, sanitation surcharge system is introduced, in which all the customers of the water and sanitation utility, regardless whether he or she is connected to the sewerage system or not, pays certain percentage of the water bill as a sanitation surcharge to the utility, which covers the cost incurred to the utility other than the cost to be covered by the sewerage charge, inclusive of the on-site sludge treatment cost. But in most African countries, the discharging cost is not covered by the sanitation surcharge. The on-site user needs to pay the discharging fee to the private discharging vendor separately from the sanitation surcharge to be paid to the utility. The sanitation surcharge is a useful financial measure to broaden the financial basis of the utilities. Since many water and sanitation corporations in Africa is doing not only sewage works, but also the works related to the on-site sanitation management, particularly the improvement of the on-site facilities and the treatment of the on-site sludge. Such costs needs to be recovered by the sanitation surcharge. But the sanitation surcharge introduced in African countries is not enough to reduce the financial burden of the users of on-site facility who needs to pay $50 or more to the private vendors, which is sometimes too expensive for the average household. Next, please. The environmental charge introduced in Manila, the Philippines, has brought a breakthrough on this problem. Next, please. In Manila, the Philippines, water and sanitation services are privatized, and Manila Water is the concessionaire in the East Zone. The concessionaires are responsible for provision of not only water supply and sewage services, but also FSM services in their service areas. Consequently, Manila Water is providing FSM services by building fecal sludge treatment plant early on, in parallel with building sewage systems, which is taking a long time. In order to recover the cost for FSM services, environmental charge was introduced, a kind of sanitation surcharge. All the customers, regardless whether he or she is connected to the sewage system or not, inclusive of the commercial customers who are already connected to the sewage system, need to pay environmental charge, which is currently 20% of water charge, in addition to water charge. Sewage charge is charged to commercial and industrial customers who are connected to the sewage system, which is 30% of water charge. Thus, commercial and industrial customers connected to the sewage system need to pay in total 50% of water charge in addition to water charge. Marginal water is utilizing the revenue from these charges to cover the cost for the development of sewage system, as well as for provision of FSM services for the residential customers who are not connected to the sewage system. Since the unit water charge for the commercial customers is set at 5 times higher than that for the residential customers, cross-subsidization works in favor of the residential customers. In other words, if the residential customers pay environmental charge, which is 20% of water charge, he or she is provided the desalining service free of charge. Next question. Under the option 3, the user of the on-site facility does not need to pay the desalining charge at once, since it is included in the monthly water bill, which is already cross-subsidized. Such will reduce the financial burden on the average household user of the on-site sanitation facility greatly. Option 3 may work the best under the utility model as the organizational framework, in which the same utility does both water supply works, sewage works, and fecal surge management works. Why is the option 3 observed only in Manila, the Philippines, and not in other developing countries? In other words, why the option 3 cannot be easily introduced in other developing countries? This is an unanswered question for me. Next, please. This is my conclusion. Conclusion number 1, regulatory framework in Japan would be a useful reference for any country which wants to improve the on-site system, since the issues and challenges to be dealt with are mostly the same in Japan and in other developing countries, Conclusion number 2, organizational framework and financial framework must be the one which cope with the challenges which each country is facing and which reflects the unique situation of each country. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. This is the end of my lecture.
Thank you so much, Professor Hashimoto. There are 1 or 2 questions. Can we take up, Professor?
Yes, please.
Sure. I will read the questions for you. You may take it right now, or you may say we can. There was a question like when you were talking of reduction of diseases that has occurred over a period of years in Japan, when you were talking about that slide, there was a question, what are the other contributors in reduction of diseases, or what are the other factors that has helped in the reduction of diseases?
Okay. Okay, I think this, I already explained about that. Could you please open the slide number, this one, 13. Yes, yes, this one, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
This one.
Yeah. And I think the contributing factor is 2. There are 2 factors. One is exactly fecal surge management. The other factor is the water supply system development. Actually, in the situation of water supply, particularly in rural area, in 90s, say 40s, 50s, are not very good. So during 1950s and 1960s, government put their utmost effort to improve the water, to establish water supply system, in particular, not only urban area, but also in rural area. And it was almost completed by year 1970. So both fecal sludge management as well as water supply system, piped water supply system, yeah, Japan could eliminate the waterborne disease. That's my understanding. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And the other question was on the utility. The question is, utility is also a part of municipal right, or
Yeah.
it is completely independently from municipality?
You're asking about the situation in Japan?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. In Japan, yes, water supply, in Japan, water supply utility and sewage utility is separate. Okay. And, but both financial account of these two utilities, water supply utilities and sewage utilities, they are under municipality. Each municipality has such a utility, but their account is separated from municipal general account. This is legal obligation to separate the account of utility, municipal utility, from municipal general account. So that is the system in Japan. So separation of account is very important. Separation of account means that these utilities must operate based on the tariff or charges paid by the customers. And sometimes, particularly in case of sewage utilities, it's very difficult for them to operate 100% based on the tariff. So sometimes some injection of money from general account is necessary, but such injection of money from the general account to the sewage utilities or sanitation sewage utilities are strictly regulated by the law related to local financing. So in this sense, they are financially independent from municipal general account.
Nagendra Saab, why don't you ask your question? You have put up a question, and then later on I'll come to Sudhaji. You have put up quite a number of questions. I'll come to you. Nagendra Saab, you wanted to ask something.
Thank you very much. Actually, I was just trying to understand because there's also an advocacy, evidence-based advocacy when we talk about it's a very capital-intensive water and sanitation. But Japan model shows that if you really have the universal coverage, be it rural or urban, then definitely there is a disease burden and the benefit of that. So my question was that I was just listening, if I may be mistaken, that he said that the basic reason was both covering urban and rural. It's universal. So the moment you have the universal coverage, then the reduction in waterborne diseases is really visible to the extent. So this was my just guess. So is it correct that unless you cover both rural and urban, you may not be realizing the whole benefit of improved or safely managed water and sanitation facility? That was my question and clarification.
Hashimoto sir, how would you take it?
Yeah. Yes, you are correct. To have 100% benefit from the good sanitations, you may need to cover both urban and rural.
So
And,
in that case,
yeah.
in that case, the advocates should be, we should not be giving any weightage or something like that. It should be universal, whether it's rural and urban. So I think previously we were also discussing that now we are moving more in the inclusive. So should we say it is citywide or it's all in rural and urban? If this is the case, I mean that's the point I was just trying to highlight.
Yeah, yeah, okay. But one thing I need to say is that the technology and maybe methodology would be different from urban area and rural area. Urban area has its own program, and the rural area has a different kind of program. So yeah, I fully agree that the development of sanitation, improvement of sanitation in both urban area and the rural area is necessary. And Japan has also done it in both areas, but the methodology may be different. Okay.
Yeah. So Daji, would you like to open up your mic and camera and ask your questions one by one?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bennett, and thank you, Professor Hashimoto-san. Couple of questions. First, like since Japan had a very strong human resource capacity building, and as you stated, more than 231,000 people are trained on this. But are these trained personnel licensed for their services, and are they monitored for the performance on regular basis? So this is one question. And the second one is
let's go one by one.
Okay,
Sudhaji.
okay.
Let's take this question. Let Professor Hashimoto speak about it.
Okay.
Then we'll go to the next question.
Sure.
Yes, Hashimoto-san.
Okay. And yeah, once he has passed the examination, national examination, and got certificate, the certificate is effective for lifetime. But their performance is, in a sense, very much strictly monitored, because as I mentioned to you, okay, all the Jokaso on-site sanitation facility in Japan are checked by the third-party inspection agency once a year. It will continue for the Jokaso's lifetime, 30 years or 40 years. Okay, so if the performance of Jokaso is not good, the inspector will check who is operator, who is the surrounding vendor, and give some warning to them. You must do proper job. So in this system, these operators or private operators or discharging vendors are always under the pressure to operate properly. That is the system in Japan. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hashimoto-san. Yeah. So Daji, your next question.
Thank you, Professor Hashimoto. The second one is, you have touched upon earlier also the two models of municipality model and the utility model. But in case of Japan, does all the utilities fall under the jurisdiction of municipal authority, so that the utilities are monitored by municipal authority, or they are independent utility entity for the service that they are providing?
Yes. First of all, okay, as far as on-site sanitation is concerned, Japan's model is municipality model, and utility is not involved. Okay, sludge treatment plant is operated directly by municipality, and finance is given from the municipal general account. So when we talk about utility in Japan, that is sewage utility. Sewage service is done by utility. And yes, even though their account is completely separated from general account, municipal general account, their operations are monitored by the municipal government. So, each municipality have its parliament. And if there is something wrong in operation with sewage utilities, the parliament will blame them. So, yes, they are under the monitoring of municipality, government, and parliament. Okay.
Thank you. And the third question, Sudhaji, you had on subsidized finances.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hashimoto. The third query is like all the three financial models that you have presented seems to be subsidized for the low income population. So will this subsidized model be sustainable for the unaffordable segment of the society, in your opinion?
The situation in Japan, the situation in developing countries are different. What that I need to say at the beginning. Okay, in Japan nowadays there is no slums. There is no slum issue in Japan. Yeah, in the very early years after Second World War, there were slums in Japan, but because of the very rapid economic development, this slum issue had been solved very quickly, fortunately, in Japan. So, therefore, in Japan, there is no specific subsidy system in the sanitation sector, which is subsidized, which targets the poor customers. So there are subsidies for sewage as well as for jokaso in Japan, but this subsidy is provided to the users, regardless of their income level. In Japan, basically, still, of course, even though there is no slum in Japan, but there are still income disparities, and so what we call poor segment of people are existing. So this poverty issue is in Japan basically is solved by social security program. Okay, and in Japan nowadays the disparity is more focused between urban area and rural area. In the urban area, since the population density is very high, sewage system can be financially viable and built. But in rural areas, it's very difficult to build a sewage system since population density is low. So building a sewage system in such an area is financially not viable. So they are getting they need to depend on the on-site sanitation services. So now this segment is covered by jokaso. That is the situation in Japan. And maybe the situation in developed country is different because there still I found out that in many African countries, sometimes the share percentage of slum population is more than 50% in urban areas. And even in Asia, still substantial population lives in the slum areas. So, and in case of slum area, the different measures are required for sanitation. So therefore, and sometimes subsidy is also required. That's my view. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Hashimoto. Thanks a lot.
There was a question, Hashimoto sir, that does third-party verification also involve, or monitoring also involve municipal and utility-run services like fecal sludge treatment?
You're talking about the regulatory agency, regulatory authority,
the third-party regulatory agency. Yes.
Yeah, which is we observe in some African countries. Yeah, in case of these regulatory authority in African countries, so they are previously, say for example 10 years ago, they their regulation and monitoring is limited to water supply and sewage services. But nowadays, they are more focused on the on-site sanitation side. Because you see, their role is to balance the interest of customers and the utilities. And as far as customers are concerned, their role is to make sure that utility provides some kind of sanitation service to all the customers, inclusive of those who are living in the slum, slum area, who needs to rely on on-site sanitation. Therefore, inevitably, they need to focus on on-site sanitation more in order to fulfill their role of other regulatory authority. So yes, last year I visited 3 African countries. And in these 3 countries, I am very much impressed that this regulatory authority is talking a lot on on-site sanitation, particularly fecal sludge management.
There was a question for sewerage services. Is there only one utility company for one city, or many companies compete for one city?
Okay, so in Japan, first in Japan, water utility and sewage utility is separate. So always there are 2 utilities in one city: water utility and water supply utility and sewage utility. And in Japan, for sewage utilities, as far as sewage utility is concerned, 1 in one city. Okay, but there are exceptions because there are 2 or 3 cities in the same river basin, and in this case, it's better to one sewage system covers not only one city but also 3 cities. So in such a cases, the sewage utility which covers multiple number of municipality is created under prefectural government, and the prefectural government utility, sewage utility. That is the situation in Japan. And in African countries, yeah, there are two types. One type is that there are national utility, national sanitation utility, or national water and sewage utility. There are such cases. But besides that, there are cases that in each municipality has its water and sanitation, water sewage utility. That is the situation in African countries. And in Manila, the Philippines, they have two, in Manila, they have two water and sewage utilities. And they are private. So in a sense, they are competing. So I think in case of the privatization, I think it's better to make two utilities in one city, and maybe area divided by service area. If you make it such a way, yeah, there are good effects of competition, service quality competition. That's my suggestion.
Right. And there was a small question from one of our participants: is what is the cost of jokasu for an individual household? What would be cost of one, jokasu unit for an individual household?
Okay, it's a very difficult question because actually the price is sometimes top secret for manufacturers, so it's rather difficult to collect such information. But and that's one point. And the second point difficulty is that, you see, Japan's price in Japan, the price in developing countries like in India is maybe very different. Yeah, because difference of labor cost and other material cost as well. Very, very roughly speaking, in Japan, one household jokaso for, say, 5 family members costs maybe $6,000. $6,000. But in Japan, if the sewage system, cost of sewage system per household is much higher. Say it would be $40,000 per household. So compared to the cost of sewage system, capital cost of sewage system, jokaso cost is considered as a lower price option in Japan. Okay.
Related to this is a question, sir. Is there any subsidy given by the government to install household level jokasu systems?
Yeah, there is. There's 2 or 3 different programs, but in case of each household install his or her own jokaso by themselves, 40% of the capex capital cost. So 40% of $4,000 is subsidized in Japan. And yeah, I'll explain my observation on the cost of jokaso in developing countries. I collected this data over last 10 years. And I think it will cost around $2,000 per household in Indonesia, in Thailand, and maybe in India too. $2,000. And I don't know how much the septic tank costs. But so comparison, you may compare the cost between Jokaso and septic tank. You may. But another information which I know is that, say, in United States, do you know how much septic tank costs? It's around $10,000 per household. So more expensive than Jokaso in Japan, in United States. So yeah, it all depends on the situation. Yeah, the more program for Jokaso in developing country is, I think it's not rather more problematic on the operation and maintenance cost side. In developing countries like Indonesia or Thailand or China, even China, in China. Now, I made a very rough calculation. How much does it cost for operation and maintenance of Jokaso in developing countries? And I got the figure. It is about $8 to $10 per month, per household. $8 to $10 per month per household. That is, if the similar maintenance system, maintenance service is provided as in Japan. So in Japan, it costs much more, say about $40 per month. So in developed countries, $8 to $10 per month. The difference comes from human personnel cost. In Japan, labor cost, because most of maintenance and desurrounding work is done by laborers. So in Japan, labor cost is very high. Therefore, in Japan, operation and maintenance cost of Jokaso is like $40 per month. And in developing countries, it will be $8 to $10. And how to compare with affordability to pay of developing countries? As I already mentioned, in many Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, I found out that average household residential users pay $2 per month per household for sewage charge. So compared to this $2, $8 to $10 is quite high for Jokaso. But I also mentioned that in such countries like Indonesia, even Indonesia, the Philippines, and also Malaysia as well, the sewage charge, unit sewage charge for commercial users are 5 times higher than that for residential users. So since residential users pay $2, that means that commercial users is paying $10. So for commercial users, Jokaso is okay. That is my very, very rough calculation. Okay.
There's a question: is Jokaso a patented technology, or is it possible to be adopted by other countries?
Yeah, I think it can be adopted to other countries. So some component, some technology of Jokaso is, say, Japan, some Japanese company have patent or something like that. But technology itself is not a very, very complicated technology. So it's, I think, adoptable in developing countries. And you may know, in India, already one manufacturers, which is joint venture between Japanese Jokaso manufacturer and Indian company, have a factory and producing Jokaso locally. Okay.
And yes, sir, Rajesh, you had a question. Does it need energy to achieve aerobic conditions in Jokaso? So just a little bit. I mean, I could have answered, but you are giving fabulous answers. Please give that. Like, for maintaining aerobic condition, how much of energy or what kind of energy needs to be given to the Jokaso system?
Okay. I will give you the exact numbers later on. Yeah, but definitely, Jokaso requires energy. And without energy, aerobic condition cannot be made. And in this regard, also, Japanese manufacturers have developed the energy-saving technology to reduce the required energy per unit. So nowadays it's lower than maybe half of the, say, 10 to 20 years ago. Yeah. But energy is required. Don't cut energy for your customer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Hashimoto-san. That was brilliant. I'm sure all our participants must have enjoyed the session. Like, I mean, like, you are just a plethora of this knowledge in sanitation, and especially the Jokaso systems and these on-site sanitation systems. However, I guess there would be a lot of questions coming to you in future. We would jot down all those questions, write down all those questions and communicate it to you. And once you give back the answers, write down the answers to us, we will communicate back to our participants. Thank you so much for today's session. Thank you so much.
I will do that. I will do that.
Thank
So
you
don't
so much.
hesitate to give me a very difficult questions. I will try my best. And if I cannot, I will say I cannot. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, participants, for being about such a lovely audience. And then, of course, as I said before conclusion, we need to be very active with the Slido. I need more questions. In the past 2 weeks, I have got only 3 questions. Why? We should get more questions. That shows that you are more keen in listening, more keen in thinking about what you are learning. So with that, and then, of course, next Saturday at same time, we meet around with another section on environmental standards and laboratory specifications, scientific parameter verifications, and what these are, how they do work, and all these things. We'll talk about it. That's all for today. So see you next Saturday again at 4 p.m. In the meantime, please raise your questions at Slido. Please be active with the reading informations at the LMS system. Please do go through them. And then, of course, you have any questions, you can put up questions, and we would keep on sharing some videos, documents to be going through the WhatsApp group. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye. See you on Saturday.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.